The story of the United States of America. A tale that began long before it even had a name. Long before July 4th, 1776, or the signing of the Declaration of Independence, this land was home to a vast and diverse network of indigenous peoples, who had called it their own for thousands of years. From the Great Plains to the eastern woodlands, the Pacific Northwest to the arid Southwest. Native cultures thrived, each with their own languages, traditions, and systems of governance. The world they built was complex and sophisticated, but it would soon face monumental change. The arrival of Europeans in the late 15th century marked the beginning of this transformation. In 1492, Christopher Columbus landed in the Caribbean, triggering a wave of exploration and colonization that would reshape the continent. By the early 1600s, English settlers established Jamestown in what is now Virginia, the first permanent English settlement in North America. It was far from a smooth start. The settlers faced famine, disease, and conflict. But their foothold grew stronger. Soon, colonies sprouted up along the eastern seaboard, each with its own identity, its own ambitions. These colonies grew rapidly, but not without consequences. Tensions brewed as settlers pushed westward, encroaching on the lands of Native American tribes. And then there was the shadow of transatlantic slavery, a grim and inescapable cornerstone of the American economy. Enslaved Africans were forcibly brought to the colonies to build its wealth, their labor fueling industries like tobacco, sugar, and cotton. It was a contradiction that lay at the heart of the colony's ideals of liberty and freedom. By the 1760s, the British colonies in North America were thriving economically, but growing restless under British rule. No taxation without representation became their rallying cry, as new taxes and trade restrictions imposed by the Crown fanned the flames of resentment. Frustrated by what they saw as unfair treatment, colonial leaders began dreaming of something audacious: independence. In 1775, the American Revolution erupted. It was a David versus Goliath struggle of 13 colonies against one of the world's most powerful empires. Inspired by Enlightenment ideals and led by figures like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, the colonies declared their independence on a summer day in 1776. The Declaration of Independence wasn't just a breakup letter with Britain. It was a bold statement of values: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The war dragged on for years, testing the young nation's resolve. But in 1783, the impossible became reality. Britain formally recognized America's independence. A new country was born. But what kind of country would it be? The United States entered its early years as an experiment in democracy. The Constitution, ratified in 1788, was a groundbreaking document establishing a framework of checks and balances and laying out the principles of governance. But even this new democracy was imperfect. Women, indigenous peoples, and enslaved individuals were excluded from the rights and freedoms it promised. These contradictions would shape the struggles and conflicts to come. As the 19th century dawned, the United States expanded rapidly. Driven by the ideology of manifest destiny, settlers pushed westward, believing it was their divine right to claim the entire continent. This westward expansion brought promise for some, but devastation for others. Native tribes were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands, most tragically during the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. Meanwhile, new states joined the Union, raising questions about whether slavery would expand into these territories. The nation edged closer and closer to crisis. And then, in 1861, the United States fractured. The Civil War erupted between the Union in the North and the Confederacy in the South, fought over the issue of slavery and the nation's future. It was the bloodiest conflict in American history, claiming the lives of over 600,000 people. But in 1865, the Union emerged victorious. Slavery was abolished via the 13th Amendment, but the scars of the war ran deep. Reconstruction in the South brought new opportunities for formerly enslaved individuals, but also intense backlash, as groups like the Ku Klux Klan worked to dismantle progress through terror and violence. The scars of the Civil War and the struggles of Reconstruction are woven into the fabric of American history, reminding us that the pursuit of equality and justice is an ongoing journey. The country pressed on, industrializing at breakneck speed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The U.S. became a land of factories, railroads, and skyscrapers, drawing millions of immigrants from around the globe in search of the American dream. But this age of opportunity was also one of harsh inequality. Child labor, dangerous working conditions, and exploitation were rampant. Reform movements rose in response. The fight for women's suffrage gained momentum, culminating in the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920. Labor unions demanded fair wages and better working conditions. Progress was slow, but voices demanding change grew louder. The 20th century catapulted the United States onto the global stage. The nation fought in 2 world wars, emerging from both as a key player in international politics. Its economic and military power steadily grew, but so did the challenges it faced. The Great Depression of the 1930s brought widespread poverty and suffering, only to be counteracted by the New Deal policies of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The 1950s and 60s brought a prosperity boom, but also the turmoil of the civil rights movement, led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X. The movement forced the country to confront its ugly legacy of racial discrimination, leading to landmark legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But history is never static. Wars in Vietnam and Iraq tested the nation's resolve and divided its people. The Cold War raised the specter of nuclear annihilation, but also spurred technological and scientific achievements, including the moon landing in 1969. Social movements for LGBTQ+ rights, environmental protection, and gender equality gained momentum, leaving indelible marks on the country's trajectory. By the 21st century, the United States was a superpower, but not without challenges. The September 11th attacks in 2001 reshaped its national identity and foreign policy. Wars in the Middle East, a financial crisis in 2008, and political polarization tested the nation's resilience. Through it all, the promise of the American dream had been both a beacon of hope and a source of frustration for those who felt left behind. Today, the story of the United States is one of constant evolution. It's a story of triumphs and failures, of progress and setbacks. It's a story written by millions of hands, by the famous and the forgotten, the leaders and the everyday people who shaped its destiny. As we take stock of where the nation has been and where it might be headed, one thing is clear. The story of America is far from over. It is both a work in progress and a reflection of its ideals, a place where the struggle for equality, justice, and opportunity continues to this day. And in that ongoing journey lies the true essence of the United States of America,